Hello. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Please wait for
Good afternoon.
30 minutes here.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. हम यार नहीं हो रहा शेयर जो है मैं इसलिए नहीं बताइए कैसे मैंने ज्वाइन कर लिया है एरो आ रहा है प्रेजेंट नाउ नो क्लिक किया विंडो खुली क्रोम टैब विंडो एंड एंटायर स्क्रीन ओके उस पे कुछ नहीं एक विंडो खुल गई है हाँ करेक्ट हाँ क्लिक किया शेयर करें अच्छा तो नहीं हो रहा प्रेजेंटेशन तो नहीं आ रहा
Sir, visible, sir.
अच्छा पीपीटी खोल रहे हो अच्छा
Okay, sir. Visible, now visible, sir.
Okay, sir.
अच्छा हो गया
Visible, sir, visible.
ठीक ठीक बस भाई अभी स्क्रॉल करते आए हैं जी सर बस हाँ सर यहाँ से आगे करते हैं सर इस पे करें इस पे बुक पे करें नहीं बुक में से पूरा करिए इस पे
ये सही है, sir.
ओके इसको करने से ये सही है ना ठीक है
Okay, sir.
ओके अपलोड इट शेयर हेलो
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
ओके ओके
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, good morning, everyone, and Assalamualaikum. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. This
Good
most of
afternoon, sir. Afternoon, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Please
Yes,
continue,
sir.
sir. Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, we'll talk about biodiversity conservation in India and the associated issues. We'll discuss it. That topic, basically, topic or talk is oriented to be in a generalized form because I think participants are from different disciplines, science as well as social science. Is it so?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So we talk about biodiversity issues, conservation and problems, and various some laws which basically govern biodiversity conservation in India. And so most of us are familiar because biodiversity is a buzzword these days. Everyone basically is using the word biodiversity because all human civilizations, they are directly or indirectly associated with the biodiversity. Our day-to-day use is largely dependent on several resources which come directly from the forests or some rivers or wetlands, primarily basically flora and fauna. So that is why there is so much hue and cry about biodiversity conservation, and over the years, the biodiversity is declining. The ranges of the species, whether they are plants or animals, several species, their ranges of extension, they are declining. I think we can continue sometimes in English and then Hindi also. I think that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes in Hindi, sometimes in English. So that will be better, I think. No.
Bilingual, sir.
Okay, so that is why everyone is basically worried about biodiversity and biodiversity conservation and the issues related to biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is basically, if you define biodiversity, it is basically, variety and variability among species on land, that is terrestrial, marine, aquatic, and various ecosystems which are present on Earth, and the components of the ecosystem of which they are comprised. So that is all basically the variability and variety among the living organisms. So that is the general, or say layman definition of biodiversity. Biodiversity is generally related to number of species. We say that more number of species present in an area, the more is the diversity of that area. But that may not be scientifically, if you look, that may not always be true, because it also depends upon the distribution. If one area you have 20 species, another area you have 20 species or 25 species, how these species are distributed? What is the distribution of their numbers? Some species, they may be present in very large numbers, some may be present in low. So basically, distribution of the species, besides their numbers, that also basically governs the diversity in a particular area. Now, as we talk, speculations have been made that by 2000 we have already lost about 10% of the intact forests, and many species have vanished, and many are heading towards extinction. That is, we are losing them, and some of the lower organisms, like say microorganisms, or what you call as the microbiota, like say algae, fungi, bacteria, then insects. Many of these species, they are being lost even before they are brought to science, even before they are recorded, or typified. So that is and also the current, the loss of biodiversity, if it goes on in the same fashion, then again predictions have been made that by 2050, that is 2050, we'll be losing about 63% of our biodiversity. If the what you call problems, or what you call as the threats which are posed, which the biodiversity is experiencing, if they are not checked, then we will be losing a large chunk of our biodiversity, both from agriculture areas and then also the protected areas, reserve forests, village forests. We'll be losing them. Now, very important aspect is that how many species are there in biodiversity, that how many species are there. Say, for instance, we have more than 1 lakh species of animals so far reported from India, and there are it is believed that there are about 8.7 million species which are existing world over, and nearly 2.3 million of them, they are marine. That is, they are present in the seas or in the marine environments. And 86% of the species on Earth and 91% in the oceans, they still await this description. So they largely, it is in terms of smaller organisms, whereas last species, they have already been identified. But despite that, there are many species, many trees which are being discovered. Similarly, large mammalian species. During the last 20 years, there are 3-4 species of mammals, large mammals which have been discovered, or say medium-sized mammals which have been discovered in India. So, and as far as the smaller organism is concerned, most of them, they need to be, they are still pending discovery on land as well as in marine. Marine, it is more 91%, whereas on the land, it is about 86%. So they still wait description, and given the alarming scale of disturbances which are existing on land and on different habitats, most of these species which are not reported, they may go extinct or they may vanish before they are reported to science. So this is another basically equation, or say equation which can explain biological diversity. That biological diversity is a function of F is function, means it depends upon, it is controlled by factors such as say climate, then organisms, how many organisms are there, less organisms, less diversity, more organisms, more diversity, topography, parent materials, because topography is again very important factor which basically governs biodiversity. Then parental materials, substratum, like say whether it's a water body or it's a forest or it's a grassland, it's a marine environment. So it also depends upon that parental material, means the biodiversity where you are basically exploring, or which you are basically listing, or which you are trying to assess. So that is basically the parental materials, or say original basically area where you want to assess biological diversity. Then time also, time is again very important factor, because with time the biological diversity, it varies. Spatio-temporally, the biological values or biodiversity values, they change. Then it also depends upon heredity. Some species, they are they are evolving into subspecies, varieties, comparatively in less or say short period of span of time, whereas certain species, they require thousands years for develop into different varieties, and then ultimately different taxa or different species. So this is the general equation which basically govern the biological diversity of an area. So biodiversity is a function of climate factors, organisms present there, topography of the area, then the substrata or the type of habitat or the type of ecosystem where they are present, and then time and heredity. So these are the factors which govern the biological diversity of an area. Now, there are different approaches which basically exist today to conserve biological diversity of the country as elsewhere in the world. There are some certain acts, like say Forest Act, Forest Conservation Act, Wildlife Protection Act, Water Pollution Act. So similarly, there are different acts, Biodiversity Act 2002. So these are the different acts which basically govern the conservation of the biological diversity, right? And all legal basically framework is mentioned in these acts as far as the biodiversity conservation is concerned. There are certain action plans also, like action plans are mostly species bound or area bound, or say developing a particular area. So for that there is a specific action plan, and once that area is developed, once that species is rehabilitated, then that action plan give its reports, and then that is how the action plans are generally species oriented, habitat oriented, or a specific objectives they have. And once they are fulfilled, that means the action plan is what is the success that is rated as based on its success. There are certain conventions, there are in situ conservation methods, and then ex situ conservation methods. In situ means preserving or conserving the species or the biodiversity in its natural habitat as such per se, where it is occurring. So conserving that area that come like say national park, wildlife sanctuary, biosphere reserve, cultural heritage sites. So these all is basically in situ conservation, means conserving, protecting wildlife as such. Whereas ex situ is ex means excluding them under human care, like zoos, parks, then gene banks, labs, tissue culture labs, seed banks. So they all come under the ex situ, like the different zoos, Delhi Zoo, Lucknow Zoo. They are all basically ways for ex situ conservation. Ex situ में क्या होता है, बेसिकली जनरली हम उन स्पीशीज को रखते हैं जो कि मतलब रेयर हो, उनका स्पीशीज डिक्लाइन बहुत फास्ट रेट पे चल रहा हो, ताकि उनको जू में रख लें या कैप्टिव ब्रीडिंग सेंटर में रख लें। इन केस अगर वो वाइल्ड से अगर खत्म हो जाता है तो उसको जो हम रिहेबिलिटेट कर लें, एटलीस्ट हमारे पास उसका जीन बैंक है, जर्म प्लाज्म है, जिसे हम उसको रीसेलेक्ट कर सकते हैं स्पीशीज को। सो ऑल दैट कम्स अंडर द ex situ. Ex situ also requires a lot of money, lot of funding, basically to support species conservation under human care. In situ also requires funding, because there are severe or several biotic pressures, human mediated pressures on the natural areas. So there also we need continuous funding in order to support conservation. Now, Forest Acts, we'll talk about Forest Acts also. Forest Acts are basically, acts as guardians and protectors of flora and fauna, that is wildlife of the country. Which wildlife is not only animals, it is basically flora also. All microbiota which are occurring, plants, animals, insects, fish, which are occurring in their natural habitat, they all are wildlife. And the forests, they are in use in the hands of majority of population. due to which resources available are being consumed at much alarming rate, resulting in their depletion. Now, 50 years ago, in say last century, when population was less, livestock population was less, no pressures on these no protected areas, or what you call as the forest lands, wetlands, rivers, ecosystems, they were less. अब जैसे population बढ़ गई है तो pressures जो हैं human mediated pressures, they have drastically tremendously increased, and therefore we need to protect the species through these acts or action plans and rehabilitation plans for the species. And it is a continuous process. It will continue because we are not no leaving nature as it should basically be. So therefore, continuous input of humans, manpower is needed for in situ conservation as well as ex situ conservation. Now, its uses are in terms of fertility, shelter to animals, as well as tribal population, right? All these forests, they serve as very important sources of fertility, because rivers which emerge from these forests, they carry the litter, they carry the fermented material, or what you call putrefied material, from rivers to the surrounding areas where that increases material, or say putrefied or decayed material, which is transferred, or what you call as humus, which is transferred to the surrounding areas. They increase or establish fertility of these areas. Also, these habitat, whether the aquatic or grassland or forest or wetland, they provide shelter to animals, and the forest especially, they provide, they harbor the tribal populations, or what you call as the indigenous forest communities, or what you call as the traditional forest dwellers. So they are basically found in the forest, and the issue is that they have to be rehabilitated outside given funding. जैसे अब हम टाइगर रिजर्व्स की बात करते हैं, तो टाइगर रिजर्व्स में जो कंट्री में जो टाइगर प्रोजेक्ट जो स्टार्ट हुआ था 1973 में, तो उस वक्त जो है 9 टाइगर रिजर्व थे, अब जो है 55 हो गए. तो नंबर इज कंटिन्यूसली बीइंग एडेड. लेकिन जो पुराने टाइगर रिजर्व थे उनमें जो है देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पीपल रिजाइडिंग विद इन द बोथ इन द कोर एरियाज एज वेल एज इन द बफर एरिया. कोर जो है फुली प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया है, और जो बफर होता है वो उसका पेरिफेरल एरिया होता है, जहाँ पे थोड़ा बहुत ग्रेजिंग वगैरह और जो व्हाट यू कॉल हार्वेस्टिंग ऑफ द रिसोर्सेज इज अलाउड टू द लोकल कम्युनिटीज. तो ये जो है क्या बोलते हैं, ये जो disturbances है now, they have increased several fold than it was say 100 years ago. So therefore, continuous protection of these species and the biodiversity in these areas, whether it is a reserve forest or village forest or protected forest, the conservation measures or management is important, or it is required continuously. They also, forest generate revenue and for state of supplying various raw materials for in its most natural form to industries nationally as well as globally or internationally. Forest, for instance, itself, 123 trillion economy is generated in India every year through forests. So you can imagine about other, like say fisheries and other sources, carbon which is supplied by these protected areas. Carbon sinks, they are carbon sinks. So it is basically not quantified. Every material which is derived from this for human use, whether it is in raw material or partially processed form, it is very difficult to quantify them. Right now, people or say biologists, they are devising different techniques to quantify it so that make it more robust, make the methods more robust, and so that we can pinpoint that this is the economy which is generated through resources present in our biological values or biological diversity, or which are supplied by the biodiversity of the country, or biological diversity of the country. Forests are a very important reason behind climate change and in controlling the quality of air and water. Now, say forests are supplying, or even plants, flora, which is present in our vicinity, whether in a city or say village. Every day we are getting no fresh air, then the carbon dioxide which we emit that is absorbed by them and is basically channeled in the ecosystem in the form of energy, in the form of food, right? So it is very difficult to quantify this, that how much air, how much basically carbon dioxide is being assimilated by these plants. But now methods are being devised to quantify this. But it is, we know that we are doing this, we are harvesting this, we are getting this services, ecosystem services from the forest every day. But to quantify it exactly is a very Herculean or very cumbersome task. And majority of population are basically using the resources which are available, and there is, because of this, there is alarming change in the usage and decline in the resources. The users of the forest have recklessly or mindlessly basically utilized the forest for cultivation and destroyed them in the name of agriculture and other personal consumption in the form of wood, timber, fuel, and fodder. So most of the people who are residing around the forest, they are largely dependent on for fuel wood or say fodder for their cattle and timber also for furniture. So that is why there are more and more pressures. Now government is starting different schemes to forests under eco-development schemes in different reserve forests, the protected forests, so that the dependency of the communities is minimized or at least reduced on the forest resources. The need for legislation protecting, regulating the forests was required. So no different forest acts have come in no existence from time to time. 1865 was the first, and then 1867, and then 1927, then 1980. So these are the basically different acts and policies, forest policies, which have been brought for protecting the forest sources from time to time. Act of 1927 was comprehensive, and it was brought under legislation, and previous forest laws, they were reviewed and enacted, and rights of the people residing in the forest, they were also controlled to some extent in the Forest Act of 1927, right? And punishments were also basically listed or mentioned in this act, that some major or minor punishments be given to people who are violating the laws. Now, as I told you, that Act of 1865, then 1878, and then 1927, and then 1980. So these are some of the acts which have been now basically. So imperial forest was set up by British government in 1864, and to establish control over the forest. And in 1865, then the Forest Act was constituted, and the British government was empowered to declare any land which was covered with trees, and government basically made rules to manage these forests. Then in 1878, British administration acquired complete sovereignty or complete control or power of controlling forests. So that was the difference, that in 1878 Act, there was complete sovereignty of government over the forest, right? That they had complete control. And it also enabled administration to demarcate reserve forests and the protected forests, right? The difference between the reserve forest and protected forest is that the protected forests are declared by government, like say the wildlife sanctuaries, what you call as the national parks, biosphere reserves, conservation reserves, community reserves. So these are basically the protected forests. The forest types which are found there, they are under the protected forest. Whereas outside these protected forests, there are still some pockets or some belts of or corridors of forests which are again government owned, but they are not as firmly protected as the as the protected forest. So they are known as the reserve forest, and generally they are present generally around the protected areas, but they may be present away from the protected areas also. They are the reserve forest. And village forests are basically the privately owned land where you have trees. So they are basically or woodlands or the plantations. They are basically known as the village forests, and they are connected with the local communities, and the local communities itself. They protect them, and the resources which are present there in these village forests, they are harvested by the local communities, and they use them in a sustainable manner. The local rights were refused in case of protected forest. जो local rights थे लोगों के, जो इनके forest areas में जो लोग रह रहे थे, उनका भी उसमें restricted use कर दिया गवर्नमेंट ने in 1927 के एक्ट में. This means the powers of the people or their rights on the forest, they were regularized or they were protected, or only certain privileges were given to them, whereas other privileges they were checked so as the forests are not depleted at a fast rate. Also, the Act 1927, Forest 1927, it also regulated collection of forest produces by the forest dwellers. जो उसको sell out करते थे, बेचते थे major forest produce को या minor forest produce को in the form of medicine plants, or say fodder for the cattle, or what you call as the timber, or other important like say tendu leaves are harvested by people for selling, and from which the BDs, or what smoking material, raw material for smoking material. So they were also regulated under the Forest Act 1927. So people were given no authority, or they were given certain rights, whereas other rights they were checked. Brandis Dietrich was a German forest who was appointed in 1864, and then 1865 the Forest Act came, and nearly after 10 years, Brandis Dietrich was appointed as the first Inspector General of the Imperial Forest regime of India under the British regime. Okay, this we have discussed, and then came the 1980 Forest Conservation Act, which was passed through Act of Parliament, and it provided comprehensive measures for conservation of forests and matters related to forest conservation. And the Forest Act of 1927, it was replaced by 1980 Act, and here basically gave an authority to British to restrict tribal activities by levying taxes on timber and forest services. So this started in 27 itself. So here in this third bullet or third point, we are discussing about 27, that already this authority was basically exercised in Forest Act 27 by the British people to exercise their or to lessen the tribal activities in the forest as far as the timber harvesting is concerned. So taxes were levied on them for harvesting the timber. It mainly regulated cutting of timber and flow of raw materials rather than protecting the forest. जो कैसे मतलब कितना टिम्बर एक फॉरेस्ट से जाना चाहिए और कितना जो है हमें जो है उसको जो है कंजर्व करना चाहिए, that was basically the main concern of the Forest Act Conservation Act 1980, and the control to control the ongoing deforestation of the forest in India, that was also comprehensively taken up in the Forest Conservation Act 1980. Okay, जो control on the ongoing forest deforestation, जो alarming deforestation चल रहा है उसको कैसे control किया जाए. So that was also the main concern or main what you call as the salient feature of Indian Forest Act Conservation Act 1980. Now, Wildlife Protection Act is also there, which came in existence in 1972. It has 4 schedules, and which were basically 6 or more than 6 schedules. But now in 19 2023 has been revised thoroughly, and not sorry 23 22 in 2022 the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 72 has been revised, where all the schedules, they have been now reduced to 4 only. So there are only 4 schedules. Like say schedule 1 has species which are given more protection, 2 again more protection, 3rd and 4th are no little, they are also protected, but the measure of protection are not as stringent as in schedule 1 and 2. It has 7 chapters, and there are 66 sections which deals with different issues, and there are several subsections within these 66 sections which comprehensively take up the wildlife protection in India. And there are different basically punishment under different say animals or plants which are under which schedule 1, 2, 3. So depending upon that, the stringent conservation protection measures or punishments are given by government or forest department to people who are violating this Wildlife Protection Act 1972, amended in thoroughly in 2022. A scrub forest means sort of you have patches, grooves of forests, and you have scrubland or small bushes and grassland. So that is how a scrub forest looks like. And this is basically dry deciduous forest, like say Ranthambore and Sariska, from where the tigers went extinct in 2004. So here it is a dry deciduous forest, and tigers are well known in Ranthambore and in Sariska also, but from Sariska they went extinct. Ranthambore, it was once upon a time was area where highest tiger sighting was there, and so many tourists, thousands, millions of tourists were going to Ranthambore to see tigers. You must be remembering that Bill Clinton, the US president, came. So he was basically brought Ranthambore, and then the tiger was sighted. And so the funding to India from foreign agencies, it became more rigorous. Dense coniferous forests in the Himalayas, we do have basically species like pines, cedar species, then abies. There are several species which are found in the coniferous forest. They are more or less evergreen forests largely, and some of these pine species, they are semi-evergreen, and very high diversity has been reported from Himalayas in these coniferous forests, especially say up to 1400 meters. Beyond that, then the diversity starts decreasing because of harsh environments. Then we have pure pine forests or Roxburgh forests in the Shivaliks, the lower Himalayas or foothills of the Himalayas, and the Shivaliks. Sorry. So Shivaliks also are the transitional zones between lower.
Not audible.
Shivaliks are basically the Himalayan foothills, and then we go into the outer Himalayas, then inner Himalayas. Shivaliks also, there are some species of plants and animals which are this is just beginning of the Himalayas. So several elements, flora and fauna elements are there, which are typically represented in the Deccan or in the Gangetic Plain, and then also the Himalayas. Means that both species which are seen in the plains as well as in the Himalayas, they can be seen in the Shivaliks because it is the beginning of the Himalayas. Then we have the thick bamboo forests, or what you call bamboo thickets, which are very famous in the northeast India, and there are many species which are dependent, arboreal species of mammals, birds, which are dependent on the bamboo forest. And then we have in Western Ghats, we have no evergreen forests, and also to some extent in some pockets semi-evergreen forests. And outside the forest, in the background, you can see the Western Ghats, or what you call it, the Sayadri. And front में जो है आपका है ये basically privately owned land है. This used to be once upon a time thick forest or evergreen forest like we have in the backdrop of this image, the evergreen forest, but it has now been converted into monocultures primarily by coffee and tea plantations and other commercial species or plants which are not directly linked with economy or people. No, they are directly benefited. So instead of having typical traditional crops, they are having these high commercial or say economic species which are important from economic point of view or economic botany point of view, and they are basically, so this entire forest, privately owned for private forest, they have been converted into monocultures or the areas, habitats which support very less diversity. There is still wildlife present here in these pockets. There are plants present here, and they were very important corridors for dispersal of large species, especially mammalian species. Birds can still fly, but for mammals, when it was covered with forest, they were serving as very important linkages or corridors to disperse the animals, to find out settle in other suitable areas. क्योंकि जब population वहाँ बढ़ जाती है बहुत ज़्यादा, तो उनको वहाँ से बाहर जाना पड़ेगा. Otherwise, they will not be able to sustain themselves there. तो वहाँ से वो जब बाहर जाएंगे और अदर सुटेबल हैबिटेट रिसर्च में जाएंगे, तो ये एरिया जो है उनसे यूज करते थे. लेकिन ये एरिया जो है और ऐसे just a minute please, most of you problem. हेलो, कौन है, कौन बोल रहे हैं? जितने ऐसा करो से अमरूद फैन की जला के वहाँ बोल दिए कि वो बहुत जिसको वहाँ कुछ ड्रिलिंग कर रहे हैं. बोले 2 बजे तक मेरी क्लास है, क्विकली जाके बता दो, है ना. 2 बजे तक मत करिए बिल्कुल जाओ. हाँ ठीक है, ठीक है. फोन उठा लो यार, फोन उठा लो, फोन यहाँ बोल दो इसको, जमाल बोल दो. जमाल इनको बोल रहे हैं बहुत वास कर रहे हैं, क्लास चल रही है 2 बजे तक, है ना. बोल 2 बजे तक मत करेंगे प्लीज. I'm sorry. So these were very important sites for dispersal, but now they have come under monoculture, and because of tea and coffee plantations, I'm sorry, all the time, year-round, people are engaged here in some activity, harvesting or sowing or sprinkling pesticides. So now it has checked the dispersal of animals. So it is a threat to biodiversity, especially the large animals or mammalian species which move from one area to another. Then action plans, as I discussed with you, Ganga action plan, then conservation plans, rhino rehabilitation program, crocodile rehabilitation program. So these are basically species-oriented actions and plans for which a particular species is under focus, and various conservation measures are taken or as listed in the plan objectives, they are implemented, and once those objectives are fulfilled, then that action plan comes to an end, and the reports and success or failures of that plan are measured. And then what are the failures? So then again, attempts are made to basically rectify the issues or problem. Sometimes rehabilitation of poor or rural people, tribals who are displaced, who are to be displaced from these forests to the surrounding areas. So for them also, there are action plans so that these people can be rehabilitated from this protected forest to the outside area. Now, how much money is required? What will be the pros and cons? How much funding is required from? What will be the sources of funding? So all that comes under these action plans, and there are several action plans in place which are basically from time to time executed and for the benefit of the species. Like say, traffic is trade-related analysis of flora and fauna in commerce. That is the abbreviation. Traffic trade-related analysis of flora and fauna in commerce. Then CITES, Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. So that is CITES. So these have a specific mandate. CITES have appendices, and different species, they are listed in CITES, plants as well as animals, and which are in commerce. So they are basically listed here, and no action or what you call as punishment is given to people depending upon the severity of the issue. So that is what the action plans are. It has multiplication and breeding of threatened species. They are maybe concerned with breeding or of the threatened species. Then a restriction on introduction of exotic species without adequate investigations. ठीक है, जो मतलब exotic species हम ले आते हैं यहाँ पे और जो है वो बहुत फास्ट स्केल पे ब्रीड करने लगते हैं और जो है फैल जाते हैं. जैसे कांग्रेस ग्रास का एग्जांपल दें, सब लोग ज्यादातर लोग जाते हैं कांग्रेस वीड और व्हाट यू कॉल है द कैरेट वीड. वो जो है 1955 में जो है आया था प्लांट जो है पूना में बिकॉज ऑफ वीट और गेहूं जो इंपोर्ट किया था यूएसए से, उसके साथ आया था और पूना में जो है सबसे पहले इसका रिकॉर्ड हुआ था. एंड देन नाउ it has spread to all the states, union territories, and it has not even spared the islands. Andaman Nicobar Islands में लक्षद्वीप में भी पहुंच गया है carrot wheat or what you call it the Congress wheat. And thousands of people are dying because of allergies which are caused by this plant. Similarly, lantana camara is another species which was also imported from Mexico and during wheat import, and lantana also has reached almost all states and causing havoc, removing or pushing off the local or native species, and they are growing alarmingly or in very large scale all around. And some even they have reached the reserve forest and the protected forest. In some areas, government is spending millions and millions of rupees every year to get rid of lantana, and especially lantana because it is a wooded shrub, and it chokes the entire area and replacing the natural shrubs which are important for wildlife or species in these reserve forests and protected forests. And action plans are also, we have already mentioned this, that protecting the traditional skills and knowledge of people for conservation. Then conventions like say Bonn Convention, Germany, 1977 was declared and it came into force in 1983. It is also known as the CMS or Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species, and it's a very important part of international environment. Conventions and protocols, and it protects basically the migratory species of wild animals and also their habitats. So, जो भी मतलब जो है migratory species हैं, whether mammalian species or bird species or other butterfly, dragonfly, they also migrate between continents. So for these species, whether it is protected species in that country or not, so it is mandate on the government under the CMS convention that any such migratory species, it is the responsibility of the government to give no conservation measures, provide or extend conservation measures for these species so that during their migration, they are safe. There are 131 parties under the Bone Convention or CMS or Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species. There are 131 parties to it. CITES was conceptualized or declared in 1963 and at a meeting of the IUCN and International Union on Conservation of Natural and Natural Resources. So that came into existence or force in 1975. And it is again an agreement between the governments, and the objective of the preservation of planets, plants, and animals by ensuring that international trade in their specimens does not threaten their survival. So that is the mandate of the CITES. जो भी यानी कि हमारे जो plants और animals जो trade में commerce में उनको जो है ensure करे कि वहाँ की parties or what you call it the governments that their trade is not affecting or not threatening their existence. It is believed that nearly 5,600 species of animals and 30,000 species of plants, they are protected by CITES against their overexploitation through international trade. Appendix 1 में जो है species which are in danger of extinction, Appendix 2 need monitoring so that trade does not become a threat. मतलब वो उतना threat नहीं है उनको, लेकिन their trade need to be continuous monitoring so that they do not become, they may not in times to come find place in Appendix 1 instead of Appendix 2. Ramsar Convention is another very important treaty, which is intergovernmental treaty, and it was signed in 1971 in the Iranian city of Ramsar. That is why it is known as the Ramsar Convention, and it came into force in 1975. And there are 171 contracting parties who have signed these, signatories who have signed these, and who are basically binding governments of these countries. They are binding for Ramsar Convention, and the main mission is to conserve wisely the wetlands, the resources which are derived from wetlands through local and national actions, and also international cooperation. Right? And it is a contribution towards achieving sustainable development through the world. So how wisely, these wetlands, they should be, they should be harvested in a sustainable manner. So that is basically the mandate. And as of today, that is by 2024, there are 2,500 wetlands in the list of wetlands of Ramsar sites, and there are 85 in India. There are 85 Ramsar sites in India, which were 25, say, in 2000, say, around 20 or 18 years ago, but now the numbers have gone up. It is 85, and there are more which have been identified to be brought under the Ramsar Convention, or Ramsar sites, or Ramsar wetlands. Originally, the treaty focused on conservation of habitats for water birds, right? And now the species also. Then we have the in situ conservation, that is basically the protected areas network. Protected areas, as I told you, as listed in the Wildlife Protection Act हमारा जो 1972 का है, उसमें जो है 4 तरह के प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया लिस्ट हुआ हुआ है. ठीक है जी. एक आपका है नेशनल पार्क्स, दूसरा है वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज, तीसरा है कम्युनिटी कंजर्वेशन रिजर्व्स, और चौथी टाइप की जो कैटेगरी है दे आर कंजर्वेशन रिजर्व्स. जो आपके बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व्स हैं, टाइगर रिजर्व्स हैं, एलिफेंट रिजर्व्स हैं, कल्चरल हेरिटेज साइट्स और व्हाट यू कॉल एज द वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट्स, वो जो है वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट में नहीं है, but they are also important sites for biological diversity or for conserving biodiversity of the country. Then now these protected areas are basically are the locations or the areas which receive protection because of their known natural, ecological or cultural values. So, हम national park or wild sanctuary क्यों है? क्योंकि it has a known significance, known importance of holding biodiversity, some ecological and cultural significance. So that is why a protected area, national park or wildlife sanctuary or a conservation reserve or community reserve is there, right? So that is why it is there. Then there are about 2,02,000 protected areas world over presently, and it represents about 10 to 15% of the world's terrestrial and marine areas. तो 10 से 15% के करीब जो है एरिया geographical area world over is covered by particular areas, which is significant. But in India, it's nearly 5.3%. India, out of the total land mass, it is just 5.3%. इंडिया का अगर आप geographical area लेंगे तो it is between 2.3 to 2.4% of the total geographical land mass or total geographical area of the world, 2.3 से 2.4%. But it harbors more than 8% of the biological diversity of the world. So India is very rich in biological diversity, although comprising just 2.3 to 2.4% of total land mass of the world, total geographical area of the world. So that is why there is so much hue and cry for protecting the biological diversity of India, because it is significant. More than 8% of the global diversity is occurring in India because of its landscape, because of its diversity in the habitat, diversity in the regions, diversity in the biographic zones. From south to west, east to west, if you see, there are tremendous, huge gradients in terms of rainfall, in terms of precipitation, in terms of culture. All these gradients, they attract different biodiversity values, and that is why we have too much of diversity or biological diversity in India. Now, if you talk about the statistics of protected areas, we have about 981 protected areas, and उसमें से जो है आपका 106 national parks है, 573 wildlife sanctuaries, 115 are conservation reserves, and 220 are the community reserves, as notified by Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change in November 2023. Apart from this, we have, as I told you, tiger reserve, elephant reserve, biosphere reserve, World Heritage Sites. So all that also harboring significant diversity or biological values or biological diversity of the country. And this includes 55 tiger reserves and 33 elephant reserves. The tiger reserve, they spread over 18 states.
Hello.
Elephant reserves, they are covered in 14 states in India. Now, this is the different regions, or rather biographic zones. If you travel here, see this map, then from Trans-Himalayas, then Himalayas, Himalayas, Trans-Himalayas, Himalayas, then this is oranges, this is your Gastric Plain, and this is your this is semi-arid, and semi-arid. This one is semi-arid, this is the arid, or what you call as the desert. And then you have Northeast India, this is the Deccan Plateau, and Deccan Plateau, the largest, most extensive of all biographic zones, covering nearly 43 to 45% area of the country. And on the west, we have this reddish tinge, this is shade is Western Ghats, or what you call as the Sayadri. And then we have the west coast and then east coast harboring here, Sundarbans here, right? So east and west coasts are again unique coastal areas which also harbor. So that is the geographical or biographical disposition of India in the world map, and this is how the protected areas are dispersed all over the country. You can see we have a very good coverage network of protected areas. But many of them, they are very small in size, ranging in size from few square kilometers only, rather than having 100 square kilometers. Rather, many of them, they are very small in size. Here we have Lakshadweep in the Arabian Sea, and in the Bay of Bengal, we have the Andaman Nicobar Islands. So here, so this diversity is again because of here, Oriental region. Then here it is connected to the Sub-Saharan, to the Middle East countries, and then Sub-Saharan and Saharan. Here, sea, Arabian Sea, and then the Bay of Bengal, right? So that is why there is so much of diversity, because it is juxtaposed around different regions of the world. Now this is the percentage national parks covering nearly 1.3%, wildlife sanctuaries nearly 4%, conservation reserves less than 1%, community reserves still very less, fractional 0.04%, and total of these particular areas, they provide 5.3% the geographical area of the country, which is protected as national park wildlife sanctuaries. So we have talked about national parks, and so it is an area which has adequate ecological, faunal, floral, and geomorphological, natural, zoological significance. Geomorphological means, like say, landforms, like say gradients, catchment areas, different forest types. So they provide different geomorphological features, and they attract different biodiversity values. So geomorphological features of an area are very important aspects of its biological diversity. Same is true for wildlife sanctuary also, but here in national park, the difference is that here the human activities, they are not existing. If they are existing, then it is very rare. Very rarely you will see that there is some interference in national parks. And if it is say some resources are to be channeled or say to be harvested by the communities, then there is an appellate authority, that is the state forest department, chief wildlife warden, who give this permission for doing so. Otherwise, there are no human activities, no human mediated activity in a national park, right? Especially in the core areas. In the buffer area or peripheral area, sometimes this permission is given. Private ownership rights are not allowed. No, private ownership rights means that the people who are dwelling in the forest, that is not allowed in the Wildlife Protection Act now. But those parks which are there since 1927 or which were hunting reserves, so the people are still there. But new parks and sanctuaries which are now being declared, there all the private ownership rights, they are settled before that area is declared as a wildlife sanctuary or national park. Okay? So this is a key difference between national park and wildlife sanctuary. कि अगर आपको वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी बनानी है और आपको लग रहा है कि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एरिया है, अगर आपने 2000 साल में इसको नहीं डिक्लेयर किया सेंचुरी, तो यहाँ पे जो बायोलॉजिकल डाइवर्सिटी है, रिसोर्सेज हैं, वो जो है खत्म हो जाएंगे. तो उसको जो है गवर्नमेंट जो है डिक्लेयर कर देती है, चाहे वहाँ के पीपल राइट्स सेटल हुए हैं नहीं, ये लोगों को वहीं रहने देती है, बाद में उनको फिर सेटल करते हैं. वेयर एज इन नेशनल पार्क इट इज नॉट सो. नेशनल पार्क आपको क्लियर करना है तो पब्लिक राइट्स, पीपल राइट्स, दे हैव टू बी सेटल्ड फर्स्ट. उनको वहां से बाहर करना पड़ेगा. जो भी उस पे मतलब फंडिंग चाहिए वो गवर्नमेंट उसको जो है मैनेज करेगी, लेकिन वहां पे उनके राइट्स जो है सेटल होने के, वो जो है आपको सेटल करने पड़ेंगे नेशनल पार्क डिक्लेयर करने से पहले. सो दिस इज द मेजर one main difference between a national park and wildlife sanctuary. Other is that core areas and peripheral areas, they are least disturbed or not disturbed at all in a national park, whereas in a sanctuary, the buffer areas, or what you call it, the peripheral areas, they may be allowed for grazing partially, and also for harvesting the resources of those areas partially by the community by the community, by giving authority, by giving permission by the state forest authorities. So that is the difference, and we have already discussed the wildlife sanctuary also here, that private ownership rights, they can be allowed as long as they do not interfere with conservation, preservation, and well-being of the animals. If they are not disturbing the animal plant communities much, their ownership rights can be allowed in a sanctuary, but not in a national park. Controlled harvesting can be permitted in these areas by getting permission from the forest park. Okay, the main difference we have already discussed. Certain rights, like no grazing is permitted in national park, which we have discussed, but in a wildlife sanctuary, the chief wildlife warden, CWLW, chief wildlife warden, may regulate, control, or prohibit it. Right? जो एक petition दी है किसने 1995 में, सिविल petition, that जो wildlife sanctuary में जो mention किया हुआ है law में, उसको भी जो आपको जो है permission नहीं देनी चाहिए. That is what it is said. Okay, then conservation reserves. No, conservation reserves are again declared by government, and the conservation reserves are basically relatively smaller areas, unlike the wildlife sanctuary national parks, and they are declared by state governments. And uh, they are generally, if you see these conservation reserves, their locations are generally around the national parks and wildlife sanctuary. जो आपके नेशनल पार्क और वाइल्ड सेंचुरी है उसके आसपास जो रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट हैं उनको मैंने आपको जैसे बताया था कि वहाँ डिस्टर्बेंस होते हैं, बहुत ज्यादा ग्रेजिंग भी कर रहे हैं लोग, फायर्स भी होती हैं, वहाँ लोग आग लगा लेते हैं, ताकि उसको मिनिमाइज करने के लिए वहाँ गवर्नमेंट जो है कंजर्वेशन रिजर्व डिक्लेयर कर देती है, जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट नेशनल पार्क है। वहाँ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कोई स्पीशीज है, प्लांट्स की स्पीशीज है, तो उस रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट को जो कि पर्टिकुलर एरिया नेशनल पार्क या वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी की जस्ट बाहर एग्जिस्ट कर रहा है उसको कंजर्वेशन रिजर्व डिक्लेयर कर देते हैं, ताकि वहां की डिस्टर्बेंसेस को चेक कर दिया जाए, रोक दिया जाए, और जो है वो एक कॉरिडोर की तरह काम करता रहे उन एनिमल्स को डिस्पर्स होने के लिए, राइट। Such declarations are made after having several consultations with the local communities. ऐसा नहीं है, जबरदस्ती नहीं है उसमें. Whenever such community reserves are declared, there is a lot of licensing or preliminary work which is done in the form of meetings and licensing with the local people. अगर वो चाहते हैं तभी उसको किया जाता है. If they don't want, then it is not done, because otherwise it will bring it in more conflict, right? So that is how the conservation reserves are declared, and usually they are located around. Necessary नहीं है कि वहीं वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी या नेशनल पार्क के आसपास ही होंगे, but largely they are located there. And the main purpose of doing so is that these areas, reserve forests, which are present in the vicinity of protected forest, they can be saved from disturbances, and they can serve as corridors for dispersal of wildlife, that is plants and animals, from these wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. The rights of people living inside conservation reserves are not affected, क्योंकि वो पहले ही लोग वहाँ करते हैं, तो वो उनके rights उससे affect नहीं होते. There are 222 115 conservation reserves, 222 conservation reserves, community reserves. 115 conservation reserves in India, for instance, Asan Barrage on the border of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, Jheel Mil Jheel or Jheel Mil Tal in Uttarakhand, around Meerut, then Tiruvannamalai Conservation Reserve declared on February 14, 2005. This was the first conservation reserve of the country in Tamil Nadu. Then community reserves. Community reserves are also declared by government like conservation reserves. The main difference is here that the land which is owned, or the land which is basically land of or area of the community reserve is of public, belongs to public. So if you people or public or communities say that find that there is some important sacred group or say important cultural religious area where there's a forest patch and there is some no important which is important for them, say if there is a wetland or a river passing through that which has no long-term benefit for the people, and there are some developmental project people perceive, उनको पता लगता है कि हाँ कोई कल को डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट आ सकता है, रेलवे नेटवर्क आ सकता है, रोड आ सकता है, नो हाईवे आ सकता है, तो वो उसको जो है गवर्नमेंट से लाइजनिंग करते हैं, गवर्नमेंट को बोलते हैं, डीएफओ को यानी कि डिस्ट्रिक्ट फॉरेस्ट ऑफिसर है उससे अपोज करते हैं रेंजर को, और ताकि कि भाई यहाँ पे कल को ऐसा हो सकता है तो हम इसको जो है कम्युनिटी रिजर्व डिक्लेयर करना चाहते हैं. सो दैट इज हाउ इन द प्राइवेट लैंड अ कम्युनिटी रिजर्व कैन बी डिक्लेयर्ड, चाहे वहाँ पे एक सेपरेट फॉरेस्ट पैच है या जो है एक प्लांटेशन है या वेटलैंड है या रिवर का कोई कैचमेंट एरिया है, so that can be declared as a community reserve by the people in consultation with the forest park. Now, community reserves are declared for the purpose of protecting against flora, fauna, and traditional or cultural conservation ethos and values and practices of the people. अगर उसको प्रोटेक्शन में ले आएंगे तो वो जो है उसका लॉन्ग टर्म कंजर्वेशन और लॉन्ग टर्म बेनिफिट्स टू द पीपल विल इंक्रीज, बट इफ इट इज नॉट सो देन इट मे बी डिस्ट्रॉयड इन टाइम्स टू कम. Okay, and then rights of the people living inside, they are also not affected like in conservation reserve. Keshwapur Cham community area in Gurdaspur in Punjab is one of the oldest conservation reserve in the of India. Then besides this, as we discussed, tiger reserves are there, then the elephant reserves, biosphere reserves, and then World Heritage Sites, which are 40 in number. And about tiger reserve, biosphere reserve, we have already discussed, there are 18. And total biosphere reserves are 701 in the country, in the world, which are spread over 124 countries. Now, tiger reserves, let us not go into fine details, but it was started in 1973. Now, why tiger reserve is important? Because once a tiger reserve is declared, several thousands and thousands of species of plants and insects, animals, microbiota, small biota, aquatic wildlife, wetland wildlife, they are protected indirectly. Although tiger and its prey base or the species on which is hunt, they are protected primarily under the Project Tiger, but indirectly, there's several other communities of plants and animals, they are benefited as a result of stringent measures which are exercised for protecting tigers and its associated prey base or the food of the tiger. So that is the beauty of tiger reserves, that it harbors a landscape of several species, assemblages, and they all are benefited as a result of tiger reserve by declaration of the tiger reserve. Starting from Night Tiger Reserve in 1973, when Project Tiger was launched in April 1973, now the number has gone to 55. The latest one is Dholpur area in Rajasthan, near Gwalior. Biosphere reserves. Now, biosphere reserves, unlike wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, community reserves, are huge areas, usually more than 5,000 square feet area, where you have livestock, agriculture area, people, plantation, forest, reserve forest. Everything is occurring, or co-occurring in a very harmonious or sustainable manner. So that is the difference between biosphere reserve and wildlife sanctuary and a national park. Here you have agriculture also, livestock, cattle, people, communities. They are reserve forests. And it could be part of protected forest also. So that is how the biosphere reserve is different, or so it is a larger, basically, conservation, you can say, way or component, or you can say it's a flagship. It provides flagship, or say much wider perspective, fulfills much wider perspective of conservation, of forest conservation, or wildlife conservation. Now they are basically unique learning areas. Learning areas क्यों इसको बोल रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे आपका एग्रीकल्चर भी है, तो वहाँ lot of disturbances are there. तो अगर आपको वहाँ पे जो रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट है और उसके एडजेसेंट एरिया में एग्रीकल्चर है, तो how these reserve forests are getting affected by the activities in the agriculture areas by the people, that can be documented. So it becomes a learning experience कि हमारे जहाँ रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट के आसपास जहाँ एग्रीकल्चर एक्टिविटी चल रही है, यहाँ लाइफ स्टॉक ग्रेज कर रहा है, वहाँ जो है कैसे है वाइल्ड लाइफ, वहाँ कैसे है बायोडाइवर्सिटी, और जहाँ आपका जो है बिल्कुल नहीं चल रहा रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट के आसपास कोई एग्रीकल्चर एरिया नहीं है, ग्रेजिंग नहीं है, तो वहाँ जो है आपका बायोडाइवर्सिटी वैल्यूज क्या है, बायोडाइवर्सिटी क्या है. सो वी कैन कंपेयर द टू, एंड सिमिलरली along these different gradients, less disturbance, medium disturbance, very high disturbance. So along these gradients across biosphere reserve, we can quantify the disturbances and learn what is basically happening. So that is why unique learning areas for sustainable development and diverse ecological, social, and economic contexts influencing the lives of more than 250 million people world over. So in biosphere reserve, there are more than 250 million people who are residing in the biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves are declared under a UNESCO scheme, which is known as Man and Biosphere Reserve Program, or MAP. It started in 1974, and in India, it started in 1980s, and the first biosphere reserve was declared in 1986. That is the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve in the Nilgiris down south in the Western Ghats, or the adjacent area of the Western Ghats. So that is the That is the structure, or that is how the biosphere reserve is like, and how it differs from the sanctuaries and the wildlife sanctuaries and the wildlife national parks. The major objectives of biosphere reserve are in situ conservation of biodiversity values and contribution to sustainable economic development, because livestock, agriculture, everything. So in a sustainable manner, sustainable economic development. So that is the mandate or one of the objectives of the biosphere reserve. They also provide facilities for long-term ecological studies. क्योंकि वहाँ लोगों की permission लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. People are already there, so anyone can go and inform the forest department and conduct studies on long-term basis or short-term basis, and carry out environmental education and training programs and research monitoring in the biosphere reserve. So these are the main objectives of biosphere reserve. Same way, like we have core zones and buffer zones, or what you call peripheral zones or peripheral areas, and transitional zones in a national park and wildlife sanctuary. Same are present here also, right? Besides that, here we have tourism zone also, and agriculture zone and restoration zone. जहाँ लग रहा है कि आपका एग्रीकल्चर बहुत ज़्यादा ग्रेस कर रही है, तो आप उसको आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं और उसको जो है वहाँ पे ग्रेजिंग और ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी जो है स्टॉप कर सकते हैं, एंड it can be left for few years till the communities or till the ecosystem restores or comes back to the homeostasis or original state. Then again it can be harvested. Again the activities can be brought there. So here this restoration zone is basically within a biosphere reserve. Agriculture is manipulation, जहाँ पे आपके लोग मैंने बताया agriculture जहाँ होती है, that is basically known as the manipulation zone, because people are all year round are basically using that area for agriculture. So manipulation zone, agriculture, manipulation zone, and there are within certain areas which are identified for tourism. So biosphere reserve में जो है लोग जाते हैं, thousands, lot of revenue is generated. वो जो है national park और wildlife sanctuaries में भी होता है lot of tourism, but it is not randomly, means tourists cannot go anywhere. There is a set route, there is a set track which is identified, and the tourists are allowed to go only on the defined area or defined route, right? And anyone who avoids or who violates the rule, there is a punishment, right? So fine is imposed on that, and because the forest people are following you, or they are sitting in your vehicle or the car to monitor. Forestry zone, forestry manipulation zone is where the forestry operations are going on. Some planting of the species, say there are some fast-growing species of trees, or there are some economically important trees, so they are grown or they are sown there. So that comes under the forestry manipulation zone. So these further zonation, 5 types of zonations can be seen in a biosphere reserve. So these are the biosphere reserves of the country, and the last one or latest one is the Panna Biosphere Reserve. Here, this area in Madhya Pradesh. So Panna Biosphere Reserve with the 18th Biosphere Reserve, which is in India: Simlipal, Kanchenjunga, Pachmari, Agasthamlai, Nanda Devi, and Nilgiri. This was the oldest biosphere reserve of India. World heritage sites, as I told you, there are 40, and out of these 40, 7 are national, 32 are cultural, and 1 is mixed world heritage site. Means it is cultural as well as national. As of old statistics, 2018, there were 1,073 sites listed world over as world heritage, out of which world heritage sites, out of which 40 they are in India, 1,073 world over, out of which 832 are cultural, 206 national, 35 mixed, and 163 parties are basically collaborating in or they are parties or signatories to world heritage sites. And as far as the large number and lowest number is concerned, their maximum number is in Italy, which is in 53, then China 52, and Spain 46, France 43, Germany there are 43, India there are 40, and Mexico, that is Latin America, there are 34 World Heritage Sites present. Besides this, for protecting biological diversity, there is a Project Snow Leopard, which was launched in 2009. Project Tiger, Project Elephant, Project Bustard was launched in 2012. So this Snow Leopard project and Project Bustard we have not discussed. The rest two we have discussed. So these are new schemes which have been launched by Government of India, because Bustard or Great Indian Bustard is on the verge of extinction. It is believed that there are 7 or 8 birds which are left in Rajasthan in the Thar Desert, whereas from the rest of the states they have got vanished. They have become locally extinct. Similarly, the snow leopard also is on the verge of extinction, and India harbors significant population of the snow leopard in the Trans-Himalayan and Himalayan biogeographic zones. Now, these are the World Heritage Sites, like Kaziranga is the National World Heritage Site, Keoladev World Heritage Site, Ghana, that is located in Bharatpur, close to Aligarh, Manas, again National World Heritage, Nanda Devi, again National World Heritage Site, Western Ghats, National World Heritage Site, Great Himalayan National Park, again these are the, out of 40 in India, these are the National World Heritage Sites. This is the Western Ghats, or what you call it, the Shola Forest and Shola Grasslands, unique basically forests which are not seen anywhere in India, and above 2,200 meters elevation, and the freezing here, basically morning we cannot walk, very freezing temperatures, but the only difference between the Himalayan and this landscape Western Ghats or Shola Forest is that Himalayas, you have snowfall, here there is no snowfall, but you have frost here, and early mornings are very cold. You can see the river flowing here. So here, very disjunct kind of, here you have forest, and suddenly you land up in a grassland, right? Here again, grassland, you are moving in a grassland, all of a sudden you come into a forest, right? So very unique. You don't see such kind of forests or grasslands anywhere in India. It's unique to the Western Ghats, and several foresters they have given several hypotheses for origin of these Shola forest and Shola grasslands. These are keystone species, which is known as the Great Hornbill, which is seen in the moist desert and evergreen forest of Tarai landscape and northeast India. Keystone species because it feeds on seeds of fruits and fruits, so therefore it serves as a dispersal agent for several species of trees on which fruits on which it feeds basically. Great hornbill is a keystone species since it helps in restoration. Means a keystone that if the hornbill, if this species is not there, it becomes extinct, then several species which are dispersed as a result of this, the feces or droppings of these species, their existence will be jeopardized. A river in the Himalayan mountains, in the oak forest, oak-dominated forest, and then there's a mixed pine also. In the foreground, this is oak, and then backdrop, there are pine. So unlike the pencil forest types and the rivers, you can see here very clean or fresh, clean water in the Himalayan rivers, but here also many rivers are now polluting. Valley of Flower or Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. Here again you can see more or less pristine forest and the communities, vegetation communities, because of again very less number of people go here. Less number of people go here because they have to trek several kilometers to reach here. So it is left. Otherwise, it would have also become same as we have in the plains. Asian elephant is again a very important species which is seen in Tarai and then in Western Ghats and then some of the areas in the Himalayas, and and the Northeast India. The maximum population in Northeast India. Elephants have been referred as the ecosystem engineers. Ecosystem engineers means they have a tremendous impact on the forest. They result in degradation of the forest. They result in dispersal of the plants from one area to another, because elephants migrate thousands of kilometers from one area to another in search of food. Huge, gigantic animals which requires about 250 to 300 kilograms of fodder. इसको जो है browse या घास जो है 300 किलोग्राम के करीब चाहिए per day. So it has tremendous impact on the forest. जो अगर वहाँ से migrate नहीं करेंगे तो वो पूरा destroy कर देंगे forest को. तो इकोसिस्टम इंजीनियर इसको बोलते हैं कि जब वहाँ पे सपोज इसने बहुत ज्यादा ग्रेस कर लिया, ब्राउज कर लिया, तो वहाँ की कम्युनिटीज जो है वो चेंज हो जाती हैं. So that is how they are serving as a ecosystem engineer, means to result in large changes in an ecosystem. And they are also very important agents of dispersal of several plant species through their feces, through their dung, and wherever they defecate, the seeds of those species on which they are fed, they are established there. Lion-tailed macaque is again flat-leaf species of the Western Ghats. It's a species which is used by the conservationists, biologists for spreading the awareness program. So flagship species are those species which are which can be used as a species for awareness. कि जिसे ज्यादातर लोग जो है species से familiar हैं. अगर यहाँ किसी squirrel को लेंगे या किसी insect को लेंगे तो वो जो है उतना काम नहीं करेगा जितना कि लायन टेल मकाक करेगा, क्योंकि इट्स ए फ्लैगशिप स्पीशीज, ऑल पीपल नो इट. सो कि जो है आपका लायन टेल मकाक जो है थ्रेट में है, बिकॉज ऑल द फॉरेस्ट, एवरग्रीन फॉरेस्ट इन द वेस्टर्न घाट्स, दे आर फ्रेगमेंटेड largely by hydroelectric dams, coffee tea plantations, and the species is threatened. तो अगर हम ऐसे करेंगे तो बाकी स्पीशीज का भी ऐसे ही हालात हो जाएंगे. So that is why it is used as a species for spreading awareness as a flagship species. ये floating islands हैं मणिपुर में जो है फुमड़ी जिसे बोलते हैं. They are also unique biodiversity is found which is not found anywhere else. So these are known as the floating islands of Phumdis, PHUMDIS, in Manipur. And unique biological diversity is reported in these floating islands in Kebul Lemjo National Park in Manipur, where you have the Manipur pro-antler deer, Manipur dancing deer which goes there. So that is the species of deer species which is found only on these floating islands, nowhere else. This is also one of the critically threatened species among the deer species of the world. Then we come over to the biodiversity values, and like say ecological values, see watersheds, then subtropical rainforest, rivers, and then moderation of the climate. So several basically ecological scene with thousands of floral and faunal elements, assemblages. They are very important from ecological point of view, for studying, for increasing or for increasing the productivity of the area. More assemblages, more mixed communities, more productivity, less assemblages, less productivity. Ecosystem services, again very important ecological value of the biodiversity. Day-to-day life, as I told you, oxygen, then absorption of carbon dioxide, then medicinal plants, raw material for pharmaceuticals or medicines. So all that comes from the ecosystem services and the forests. Regional connectivity. The biodiversity values, they also provide regional connectivity among the landscapes. There are several species which are links between the different regions, right? So that is the very important from conservation point of view, from ecological point of view. Economic, subsistence of the people, generation or say raising, or what you call as the economy, or incentive measures for the people, for economy, supplemental income. Okay, जो उनका normal income है उसको supplement करती है biodiversity. Irrigation and power, right? and then tourism, right? Tourism, and then cultural, like say religious sites, indigenous people. मैंने sacred groves का कहीं जिक्र किया था. Sacred groves are also under severe threats now. Sacred groves are basically patches or areas. It may be, it may be a forest patch, it may be a wetland, it may be a catchment area of a river. So that area is protected by the people, and that these such areas, because of occurrence of certain, certain religious monuments, the people are connected with it. But now these these sacred groves are also under severe threats, and most of these sacred groves, the biological diversity are declining or decreasing in these areas. So there is some material left, but I would like to sum it up here. So if you have any query, any issue, we can discuss. Otherwise, we are stopping it here.
Sir, is there any effort for oceanic reserves have been done?
Any
Ocean life reserves.
Oceanic diversity.
Please, can you repeat your question?
Aquatic life reserves, oceanic life reserves.
There are 7 to 8 in Gujarat, and then is in Tamil Nadu. There are 3 or 4 marine reserves, which are national parks. They are located, although their number is less. But earlier, say 15 years, 20 years ago, there were no marine national park. But now there are 3, 4. And although very small in size, Andaman Nicobar also we have.
Okay, sir.
But
And,
most of them are on the land or terrestrial areas.
एक और बात थी सर कि जब हम किसी बायोडाइवर्सिटी को रिजर्व करने की बात करते हैं, किसी स्पीशीज को रिजर्व करने की बात करते हैं, तो हमारा जो थ्रस्ट एरिया क्या होता है? क्या वो हमारा एंथ्रोपोसेंट्रिक होता है या कॉस्मोसेंट्रिक होता है? कि वो कॉस्मोस के लिए जरूरी है, नेचर के लिए जरूरी है, या फिर ह्यूमैनिटी के लिए जरूरी है?
For both, actually, for both. And humanities का तो जहाँ सवाल है, humanities तो survive करी जा रही है ना? But as far as the flora and fauna is concerned or other microbiotes is concerned, उनका कोई कुछ है नहीं, right? There is no much plan except for these protected areas and wildlife protection laws. But how many people are basically following, the legislation of these laws? Every day, no one is following. No one is following, and only few people are punished. Rest of them, they escape. तो जहाँ पे नेशनल पार्क या वाइल्ड स्पेशली या नेशनल प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया बनाते हैं, तो उसका क्राइटेरिया मेन यही होता है कि वहाँ पे कोई क्रिटिकली थ्रेटेंड स्पीशीज टारगेट में है गवर्नमेंट के, और लोग उस पर बायोलॉजिस्ट बार बार उस पर कह रहे हैं कि भाई ये स्पीशीज खत्म हो जाएगा, ये इसका जो है और हैबिटेट नहीं रहा है, तो इस एरिया को आप जल्द से जल्दी डिक्लेयर करें एज ए प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया. मेन की एम्फेसिस यही है. एंड ऑल्सो विज़ कि वहाँ की अगर ऐसा स्पीशीज नहीं है जिसका बहुत कंजर्वेशन सिग्निफिकेंस है, तो वहाँ पे उसकी बायोडाइवर्सिटी सोर्सेज क्या है, उसकी टोटल डाइवर्सिटी क्या है, हाउ रिच दैट एरिया इज. जैसे 2 आपको एरियाज हैं, एक बहुत डिस्टर्ब है, दोनों की जो है बायोलॉजिकल डाइवर्सिटी मोरल सेम है, तो जहाँ थ्रेट्स ज्यादा है उसको पहले जो है डिक्लेयर किया जाएगा जो है सैंक्चुरी नेशनल पार्क, ना कि उसको जहाँ पे थ्रेट कम है उसको बाद में लिया जाएगा. So these are certain issues, the certain areas, and like say wildlife sanctuaries here. Naturally, the people are also given some rights. They are also basically given some resources or access to some resources in wildlife sanctuaries. So both are basically important.
और सर अगर कोई स्पीशीज इंडेंजर्ड हो और लेकिन वो ह्यूमन लाइफ के लिए भी डेंजर हो, तो उसमें कंट्रडिक्शन को कैसे सॉल्व करते हैं आप लोग?
उसको जो है then we have different schemes like say compensation schemes, and then whatever threat is posed, then partially or fully the government and several NGOs or from foreign agencies fundings, that's like say rhinoceros, tiger, elephants, we are getting foreign funding also So most of that funding is basically given to the forest staff for supporting them, and also some of that funding is used for dealing with these scenes like say conflict areas. Like say किसी की डेथ हो गई है तो उसको सपोर्ट करने के लिए पार्शियल और फुली दैट इज डन. तो स्पीशीज को तो कंजर्व करते हैं, चाहे वो आदमी को मार रहा है तब भी जो है वो करेगा जो है. ये तो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, बट ऑलरेडी दे आर एलिफेंट्स एंड टाइगर्स आर देयर, स्पेशली इन द एलिफेंट एरियाज. थाउजेंड्स ऑफ पीपल आर killed by elephants, no, and people are responsible for it. It's not the elephants responsible, it is the people.
ये तो सर वाइल्ड लाइफ के लिए है, लेकिन जैसे आपने अभी वो वीट का एग्जांपल दिया था जो रशिया से आ गई थी, और उसके से अर्जेंटीना का, ये दोनों स्पीशीज जो है उनको प्रोटेक्ट भी करना पड़ेगा कि और उनको इरेडिकेट करना पड़ेगा?
इरेडिकेट ही करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट कोशिश कर रही है. प्रोटेक्ट तो क्या करेगी, एक्सोटिक स्पीशीज कैरेट वीट और आपका लेंटाना जो आया है, ये जो है उस वक्त जो है अकाल पड़ रहा था इंडिया में. ठीक है, अकाल पड़ रहा था, भूखा बंगाली जो बोलते थे वो इसलिए बोलते थे, वहां से लोग जो है मर रहे थे, बहुत मरे हैं. तो गवर्नमेंट के पास कोई चारा था नहीं, तो पीएल क्रिएट फॉर एक फंड था, यूएस ने जो है वहां पे आपको उसको लोन दिया, और उसके तहत जो उन्होंने पे उस वक्त जो है सपोर्ट पे उसका कोई चेक नहीं हुआ, कुछ नहीं हुआ. उन्होंने हो सकता है इंटेंशनली भेजे हो सकता है ना भी इंटेंशनली भेजे हो. तो वो जो है पुणे में सबसे पहले रिकॉर्ड हुआ, और उसके बाद जो है जहाँ जहाँ वो वीट जो है लोगों ने खेतों में यूज करी, उस पे जो है सारे फैल गया. तो पीपल गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग टू कंट्रोल, बट इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट, नेक्स्ट टू इम्पॉसिबल टू गेट रिड ऑफ इट. इट विल रिमेन to some extent. You may suppress it, you may control it, but it cannot be controlled.
Okay, thank you,
sir. Myself, Dr. Ajay Kushwaha. Can I ask?
Can I ask one question, sir?
Sir, there are lots of issues regarding to monkeys in the area of Mathura, Vrindavan, Aligarh also. Sir, what is the solution about that?
Not permanent. There is no permanent solution, and again I would say we are responsible for this. No, monkeys have never been doing so. What they are doing now and the last 15, 20, 25 years, maybe 25 years. Earlier the issue was there, but it has become more. No, we are responsible for this. No, we are capturing them from one area legally or illegally, and no, putting them in new area, and we are not translating them fully. जहाँ से आप पकड़ रहे हैं उसको, वहाँ से भी आप पूरा नहीं ले जा पा रहे, वहाँ भी रह जा रहे हैं, और दूसरी जगह भी आप स्प्रेड कर दे रहे हैं. दूसरी जगह within 5 years their population is reaching in thousands, तो वहाँ से लोग फिर फर्दर उसको ले जा रहे हैं. So that is how we have spread it. So there is no solution. What can be done? Now government basically in different states like Haryana, they have taken up the issue recently, and then some of the cities and metropolitan cities, the government is again taking up this, because monkeys are becoming hostile. They are biting people, and then responsible is basically we are responsible. Forest department also initially, when they were not having much knowledge that what will happen to the areas where they will translocate them. Now they have learned, now it has been stopped, but already we have gone far ahead in spreading this issue, spreading this problem, nuisance. And earlier, monkeys, they were transported for testing medicine to foreign countries, overseas they were spread. For that also some restrictions have come, and India also, people are feeding them, So there are several ways. How can we get rid of them then when we are responsible for them? So there is no permanent solution for that. Government is trying to castrate them, making them sterile. They are making sterile the females also. But it is not possible. Their population is huge, enormous, gigantic. It's not possible. Even few animals, captive animals, or say animals which have reached breeding stage, they start breeding at a very fast rate, and they suffice or they overcome the population which have been castrated within few years. So there is no solution for this, and we are responsible.
Can we stop their breeding by the some after catching, and there's some treatment they can not be generate reproduction. They are not
Yes.
able about that. Is this is a way we can?
Doctor, we have already, the government has started this in Haryana and Uttar Pradesh also. This has been done, that they are capturing them and they are no sterilizing them, giving injections and then sterilizing them. Earlier, people were reacting to this also. That's why you are doing this. Now, because people are sufferers, the place where I live, there never used to be monkey, and now we cannot show any crop over there. Even there are small fruiting trees, they are not leaving anything. No, so we cannot, nothing can be done. Government is trying to do it. Haryana they have done, UP they have done, castrating and sterilizing them. But just we can suppress the issue, but it cannot be completely controlled. The castration program and making them sterile has already been started by Government of India, and some states like Himachal Pradesh, no government is killing them, and they are giving 700 or 800 rupees to kill one monkey. And people have been hired for this job.
So because of the some very awkward conditions when we have teaching in the classroom, we at the level of co-ed education, and there are some activities that's the creating a very awkward situation, and we cannot handle what should we do at the scenario. So this is a very shy situation.
Yeah, this is a very dangerous issue, and cannot do anything for this. Yeah. When
Thank you,
it's
sir.
not,
Thank you.
yeah, it's not possible. No, there is backlash. No, so but since government has taken it up, so then perhaps no, to some extent, if some success is achieved, then perhaps in rest of the states it can be carried over, and we can get rid of monkeys, or we can have some control on their population. But it's very difficult. It's a very big task.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much. I wish you all the best for your.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.